thanks for having both of us. It's great to talk to folks who, are interested in scientifically backed materials that they can use to just talk to folks about these issues. A little background on me. I have always been interested in the environment, and some time ago got 2 master's degrees, one in journalism and one in environmental science, thinking that I would become an environmental journalist, which in a way I did in the end, although I'm on the research side here at Climate Central. I discovered that I kind of enjoyed digging into data and doing data visualization. So I worked at the New York Times in the graphics department there for 6 years, and I've been at Climate Central for just over 18 months now. And the States at Risk project was something that we started last summer with a grant to do an assessment of climate threats and also climate preparedness in all 50 states. And this was a project that had never been undertaken before at this level of detail, or honestly, in a way that allows people to compare states, all 50 states, in any really meaningful way. And the mandate last year was to produce a report card that boiled these scores down into letter grades, because people love letter grades. And we did do that. And I'll show you the report card from last year in a minute, but I wanted to show you this year's project, which is really focusing in on more detailed information about the various climate threats. And so we have this webpage, statesatrisk.org, and it's just a matter of going and finding a state that you're interested in. This demonstration will take much less time than Dan's, because this is not primarily a web tool. It's an access portal for all the information. So when we did the project last year, we selected 5 climate threats: extreme heat, drought, inland flooding, coastal flooding, and wildfire. And then we did an assessment of all 50 states, pardon me, and evaluated only the what we call the priority climate threats in each state. So in some states, it's only 2 climate threats. In some others, like California and Oregon, all 5 of those applied. And the standards that we used had to do with where the state fell in the nation in its level of climate threat, basically. So I'll give you an example of Oregon, because it has all 5 climate threats. If you click on a state, you'll just get sort of a landing page. And this headline, that is not a picture of Crater Lake, as you can tell, but this little headline shifts as sort of our research shifts. So it's kind of highlighting our most recent, or maybe in some cases most relevant piece of research. And then there are just these large squares that allow you to access all the different climate threats. And what happens is, if you click on a particular climate threat, we'll look at inland flooding. What you get is a summary of basically all the research that we have that is relevant to Oregon and inland flooding. And in some cases, it's just a graphic. This one is a graphic that focuses on Oregon, along with, I'm sorry, this is showing Pennsylvania, because you get to do one more click to find Oregon here. And this is the overall, research report, or in some cases, just a web story that discusses how we figure this, this stuff out. And, if you look at this, for example, there's not a really powerfully strong trend for Oregon in heavy downpours. This is looking at there's a whole methodology here that we always do. So there's one. Inland flooding threat. This is actually the flooding severity index that we calculated for the States at Risk project last year, and all of our stuff from last year, and largely the same for this year, covers the time frame between now and 2050. We're doing a lot more work with 2100 at this point, and so you can, on this left-hand side, you're going to go and find everything that we have available about heavy precipitation and inland flooding. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have news stories that are also tied into this issue. So and these pages are all fairly similar. If I go back to the home page, I could have gone straight back to Oregon, I believe, but if I go back to Oregon here, you'll see that for wildfire, it's a similar thing. This is kind of fun. This is a new tracking map that we put out this summer that live tracks wildfires that are currently burning in the U.S. And that's sort of nice. And you can zoom in on on Oregon and get a look at what's going on and see how big these are. And these are active. They're updated every day from the I guess it's from NOAA rather than the National Interagency Fire Center. We don't include Asia normally. So that's kind of a fun one. And again, we've got images of large fires burning back from 1970. We've got how many acres are burning and that sort of thing. And this is, again, you'll see it's a similar basic structure. So that's kind of the threat level analysis, and that's what we're working on this year. We've done some interesting reports. We did a report about the spreading, how should I say this? The spreading, the lengthening of the season during which mosquitoes that could transmit Zika is happening, and also a little bit about how the geographic range is projected to change. That's an example of one that we've done recently. So that's the climate threat piece. And if we go back to the report card, you can actually get quite a bit more information about threats. And that's how you do it. You get to the view our report card here, and there's quite a bit of stuff here that I think would be relevant. We have the overall grade picture, and in some ways it's not surprising, in some ways it is. And then we can break it down by specific threats and look at any particular state that we might want to. And there's a national report that you can download over here on the upper right. And here's some national stuff about drought. So again, if we go into a state, if I'm on the drought map, it's going to go directly to Oregon's drought page. And this sort of highlights where Oregon falls among all the states in terms of its threat level. And again, its preparedness. So you can see here, it's sort of in the middle of its threat level, and it's done quite a bit for preparedness. And so that calculation gives us the A-, how the preparedness compares to the threat level. One thing I should say is that there's really no way to get an absolute figure of a threat level. So inevitably, we ended up doing a relative comparison. So the way we describe these grades is it's a measure of how Oregon is doing relative to its threat level compared to how other states are doing relative to their threat level. But we can scroll down. You've seen this image in this year's stuff, and here's some factoids about the summer thing, and here's the summer drought threat, and here's some actions that have been taken. Really, the most in-depth stuff is in our summary report, which is much more detailed in terms of the specific threats. We've got a whole narrative here, and there's the threat level and the preparedness level. Again, this was extreme heat, so they're not what you saw before. But we do have usually a sort of an index to look at the threat and some more facts here. And then specific facts about what has and has not been done. This is only a tiny subset of what goes into the grading system. We had literally hundreds, if not thousands, of questions that we sorted through documents to find the answers to, and then spoke to people in each state to confirm that we weren't missing anything. And we evaluated them on five different sectors there. So this is a much more in-depth report if you want to look at any individual state. And that's sort of really the summary of what we've got on there. And I would just echo what Dan said, which is that, we produce all of this scientific analysis, and then we hope that it is useful to people. And so it's great for us to be able to demonstrate this stuff to anyone who is interested in potentially using it. And I would also say, to echo what Dan was saying, that I'm available, and we can find a way to make my contact information as part of this, or included in the archive. And I'd be happy to hear from anyone who is interested in digging into this data more or trying to find something particular in these reports. Also, I will say that there's tons of data that really is not represented in this report. So for example, in all of our threat analyses, we weighted by something appropriate, like population. And so, you know, in a lot of cases, these are not, you know, these are not all that meaningful. This is a severity of widespread summer drought, the sum of soil energy deficit, blah, 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 right? You might want to say, can you just tell me, you know, how many heat wave days there are projected to be in 2050, unweighted by anything, because in some ways that's a more helpful tool for communication. And this was designed really as a explanation of how we got our results in terms of the grades. All of that stuff is available. So if there are particular data needs relative to any given state that you have, you know, I'm happy to sort through my piles of data here and find whatever I can for you. And I think that about does what I have.